Well, men are unlikely to say that, because there was never a time when those things were cues to something that men wanted in our ancestral past. But there was a time when those things were cues to something you'd want. If you're living in a cave, it's very adaptive to have a partner who's big and burly. It may not be adaptive now. Now it might be adaptive to have a partner who's sensitive and wears a tie. Unfortunately, for us, the preference remains. Was there a question in the back? Was there a question? Yes, Spencer? No! Spencer asked a good question. Does this mean there's no similarities between male and female preferences? Not at all. There are many similarities. Whatever would be a preference that would be adaptive for both genders would be a preference that everyone would have evolved, like the preference for health. Neither men nor women are attracted to festering sores. Question? So is it Daisha? Say that? Brittany. So Brittany asks, what about what's going on now with attraction to really skinny women? Where does that come from? I don't want to get too deeply into it, but a pure evolutionary psychologist would say that to the extent that that has become associated with youth, and that we've learned that that's associated with youth, then we find it attractive because we're attracted to anything associated with youth. That's why, like, people wearing schoolgirl outfits are supposed to be attractive, because we're attracted to youth. That's not the point. The point is, I don't want to get too deeply into it, because I still have another theory to talk about in the next 20 minutes. One more question. What's your name? Micah. Micah.
And how does this theory account for the existence of sensitive guys who are attracted?
I'll tell you why. There is an answer. Okay, there's an answer, Micah, thankfully, for us. The answer is, well, how is it that sensitive guys who wear ties even evolved? Like, how would we ever have reproductive success, given this theory? And the answer is, because there is an evolutionary advantage to having a mate who treats you nicely, and will treat your kid nicely, and is unlikely to stray, is unlikely to be sexually unfaithful, or even emotionally unfaithful. There is an advantage. So under some circumstances, in fact, the best situation for a woman would be to get genes from someone who's big and burly, but have a sensitive guy at home to take care of you and the kid. So like to be mates with a sensitive guy who would be treating you nicely and the kid nicely, but also have affairs with big burly guys, which, by the way, is what happens. Not all the time, but occasionally. Awesome. So here's the point. One more thing. Is this all too obvious? Sometimes people criticize this theory saying, well, come on. I knew that men and women were different. Big deal. And then you get the stinky t-shirt studies. And I assure you, if you've predicted all the results of all this, you won't predict this. Oh, no. Let me tell you about the stinky t-shirt study, probably my favorite research happening in evolutionary psychology. The idea is this. Women are looking for genetically fit partners, right? But women, it doesn't matter all the time. Because women, of course, can have sex at any time of the month, but they only ovulate at a certain period of the month. And unless they're ovulating, what's happening? What's this all about? Well, let's leave that for now. Wait, I have an idea. There we go. Okay, so unless women are ovulating, it doesn't matter who they have sex with. They're not going to reproduce. So evolutionary theory says, check this out, that women should be more sensitive to cues in a potential partner when they're ovulating than when they're not ovulating. Now, a lot of women will say, well, I know that I feel different at different times of the month, but a lot of in Western culture, a lot of the focus is on the period of menstruation. Like say, oh, when I'm menstrual, then I feel differently, but the rest of the month, I'm fine. But this theory says the period of ovulation, which is much less noticeable, should be crucial for changing your preferences of women, because There's no reason for you to care that much when you're not ovulating, and the stakes are very high when you're ovulating. So women should have evolved different sensitivity to reproductive fitness in a partner only when they're ovulating. Well, here's a sign of reproductive fitness. Physical symmetry. It turns out that people who have good genes, who are healthy, are more symmetric down the two sides of their body. They tend to have ears the same size, eyes the same height, cheekbones the same, nostrils the same size. And if those things are not symmetric, that's a sign of genetic dissimilarity, of not being quite as healthy. But you know what? Symmetry is a very hard thing to judge. Scientists study it with calipers, things like that. So how might we get a quick way of sensing people's symmetry or people's genetic fitness? Well, a group of researchers thought that maybe scent, which we can easily discern in a person, maybe scent is a cue to genetic fitness that correlates with physical symmetry, which we know is a marker of genetic fitness. So here's what they did. They got men, college men, to come to the lab, and they measured their symmetry, the length of their arms, the size of their eyes, the length of their ears, the height of their cheekbones, and they got men who ranged. Some guys were very symmetric, some guys were not. And they asked these men, they gave each man a clean white t-shirt and a bar of unscented soap. And they told these men that for the next 3 nights, before you go to sleep, shower with this unscented soap, and then go to bed wearing this t-shirt. And wear the same t-shirt 3 nights in a row. And then when you're done, seal it in this plastic bag and bring it back to us. So now they've got a stack of stinky t-shirts, of t-shirts that have been worn by these men, some of whom are highly genetically fit, and some of whom are not. Then they brought women into the lab. And they asked those women to stick their nose in those plastic bags and sniff those t-shirts. And after each sniff, they were asked to rate the t-shirt on its pleasantness and appealingness and sexiness. Now, what they found absolutely supported their hypothesis. What they found is that women who were not ovulating could not sniff the difference between a symmetric man and a non-symmetric man, but women who are ovulating preferred the scent of a symmetric man over the scent of a non-symmetric man. And that, my friends, is not something you would have guessed. Micah.
Did they compare all women like that one study, or did they measure the same women at different times during the month?
It was one study, and it was women who they knew some of these women were ovulating right now, and some of the women weren't ovulating right now. Except here's the thing, is that presumably the timing, this is actually a quasi-experiment, Mike. Because each woman were basically randomly given all of these different t-shirts, and the timing of ovulation is essentially random. So in fact, for the purpose of this experiment, women were randomly assigned to either be ovulating on the random day that the study was going on, or not be ovulating on the random day. So there's no reason to expect on average any differences between the women who happened to be ovulating that day or the women who weren't, but there were. Let me move on, because there is a whole other theory I need to talk about in the next 10